We have all been deceived at one time or another in our life. Now, I've been told by people before that they couldn't be deceived. You can't deceive me, they said. Well, they were already deceived. They were deceived into believing they couldn't be deceived. We've all been deceived at one time or another. And it's not a pleasant feeling to be deceived. It's not a good feeling to be used or took advantage of by someone else. But we live in a world of deception. There's hardly anything appears the way that it really is. There's no truth in the business world. There's no truth in advertisement. And there's hardly an instance where two people can get together and have a conversation without one lying to the other. And, you know, all this being as bad as it is, there is a deception of even a higher plane than what I've mentioned here, and that's what I want to focus on today. But how does all this deception transpire? Especially this deception of a higher plane that I want to talk about. For there is a medium or intervening substance by which this is all brought about. How many of you have heard of, I'm probably not going to pronounce this right, but Mein Kampf or Mein Kampf? I don't speak German, so that's probably not how it's pronounced. But it was a book written by Adolf Hitler shortly after World War I. And I think he was in prison when he wrote it. But in it he describes the process of deceiving and holding sway over the masses of people. Now, Adolf Hitler was a smart man when it came to influencing other people. Satan the devil is also smart. Never think that you're one up on Satan. Some say Adolf Hitler was even possessed by a demon or by Satan, and I, for one, believe he was, because he used the same tactics that Satan the devil uses to sway the masses and to accomplish the same goals. But again, how is this accomplished? There's one way that is accomplished. It is accomplished through propaganda. Now, of course, that couldn't happen in this country, could it? No propaganda in this country, is there? Now, place close attention to what he had to say, for it can be a little hard to understand here if you don't meditate on what's being said. I'm going to read a little bit of what he had to say. This is what he quoted about propaganda and how it works. He said the really decisive question is this: to whom should propaganda be addressed? To the then he asked the question, to the scientific trained intelligentsia or the less educated masses? Answer: it should always be addressed to the masses. You know, you don't address it to people who's got even common sense, you know, but to the masses. Now, the objective to all this is to convince the masses the facts are real. Now, listen to this. The facts are real. The process is necessary, whatever you're trying to get them to do. It's something that's necessary. And the necessity, whatever it is the correct thing to do. Now, that's not exactly how he says it, but that's what it says. He says, but since propaganda is not and cannot be the necessity itself, since its function is like a poster consisting of attracting the attention of the crowd and not in educating those who are already educated or striving after education and knowledge. Its purpose is not knowledge. Its effects, for the most part, is aimed at the emotions of the masses, and only to a limited degree to the intellect or the educated people. Now, I'll stop for just a moment here. What he's saying is, propaganda is something which is used by the so-called highly educated to play on the emotions of the lesser educated in order to trick them into believing something, whatever it may be, is true. And whatever it is, that it's something that is necessary that we should do. It's a means of deceiving people to accept what you want them to believe, and in doing so, you can gain control over those people's lives. He goes on to say here, he says, all propaganda must be popular, and its intellectual level must be adjusted to the most limited intelligence among those being addressed. Consequently, the greater the mass it is intended to reach, the lower its purely intellectual level will have to be. Therefore, propaganda is not concerned with the intelligent conversation, but to call attention to a certain cause and rouse emotions to that cause by the masses. It's a way of persuading the masses to rally behind you in doing or believing whatever it is you want to do. And it takes a skillful person to do this. Now, what are the tools most effective today in spreading propaganda? Well, that should be obvious to all of us. The two tools that are used most exclusively today are the television and the internet. Now there's radio and live speeches are still used to some degree, but mostly it's the TV and the internet. And even when someone gives a live speech, it is usually or often seen in real time on television and the internet. Now, if you want to see propaganda in action, I mean really put to good use, just watch the political campaigns of our politicians and all the political jargon that they throw at us every day. If you really want to see propaganda in action, that's the place to go. They give you these quick, short statements, sound bites, we call them. And they are repeated over and over and over and over and by the media till they are burned into the brains of the general population. They are not designed to appeal to the intellects, but to the emotions of the masses. Catchy little phrases. That's one of the things that is used in propaganda. And it works because most people ride along in life on their emotions rather than good common sense. Hitler goes on to say here, he says, the more modest its intellectual ballast, the more exclusively it takes into consideration the emotions of the masses, the more effective it will be. In other words, the less intellectual content it has, and the more emotional content, the more effective it will be. Propaganda is not designed to please a few intellectuals, but to persuade the masses that you are right and to rally their support behind you in whatever it is that you're seeking to do. The art of propaganda, he says, is to understand the emotional ideals of the great masses and finding through a psychologically correct form the way to the attention and then to the heart of the broad masses. And that, my friends, is exactly what our politicians do today. Exactly what they do. That is what they do to get elected. Whatever it is the masses as a whole wants, that's what they will promise they will do. If you will only vote for me, they say, I will do it. They tell us all these great things they're going to do for us, knowing full well that they cannot deliver on their promises. They're lying to us. But it doesn't bother them, because they know exactly what Adolf Hitler knew, which is, quote, the receptivity of the great masses is very limited, this is what Adolf said, and their intelligence is small, and their power of forgetting is enormous. That's true. How well he knew how people acted. We know politicians lie to us. We know they can't deliver on what they say they will do. Year after year, election after election, we forget the lies they told us before and go on to believe a whole new line of propaganda every time there's an election that rolls around. And they do it in hopes we will vote for them, to put them or to keep them in office. That's how Adolf Hitler got elected. The German people were in a depression. Along comes Hitler, making all these great promises of prosperity. And the people voted him into office by a landslide. He played on their emotions. And he did it. How did he do it, rather? He did it by lies and propaganda. Adolf Hitler had one of the greatest propaganda machines that's ever existed, I guess, in the latter times. Now, effective propaganda is limited just a few, very few points and slogans. Then it is repeated and repeated and repeated until it is burned into the brains of the general public, till the last member of the public knows or has heard it many times, and, into the brains of the masses of people, such as change we can believe in, change we can believe in, yes we can, yes we can, yes we can, until everybody knows those little sound bites or those slogans. To go on, he says here, and at any time you sacrifice the slogans and try to be many-sided, the effects will wither away, for the masses can no longer digest or retain the material offered. In this way, the result is weakened, and in the end will be indefinitely canceled out. So, if you're using propaganda, you can't in any way agree with anything that the other side is saying. But he's saying, in other words, if you keep the information short and simple, and if you offer too much material at a time, you will only confuse the people. You will only confuse the masses. So they use these short sound bites. And they harp and they harp and they harp on these little short sound bites until it becomes a part of our thinking. What Hitler is driving at is it's the end results that matter. And the propagator has no intention of reasoning or truth or intellect or giving the other side any benefit of the doubt whatsoever. You can't do that in propaganda. He says here, he says, what authorities least of all understand is the first axiom of all propaganda activity, to wit, the basically subjective and one-sided attitude it must take towards every question that it must deal with. One-sided. So there is no reasoning with the propagandist. Nothing else matters but his view of the world. It's either his way or the highway in the end. That's his goal. That is what he has set out to do. That's his objective, to persuade everyone his way is the right way. And he will use any means and any amount of lies and deception and false information that he can come up with to accomplish that. That's how Satan the devil has worked all these many, many years. He will go to any length of immorality and use anybody he can to reach his ultimate selfish goals. And the liberal media and the internet in our modern society is the two best tools that he can use today. That's the two best tools the propagandists can use. For once he has convinced the media, the liberal media, and deceived the media that the facts are real, the process is necessary, and the necessity is correct, they will finish doing the job for him. He's the first people that they're the first people that he goes to work on. If he can convince them, then they will finish the job for him. Because those are the two best tools. The liberal media, they will harp and harp and harp on these certain little sound bites until it is burned into the brains of the general public. And you and I, folks, we're part of that general public. We are part of the masses. So this is how he spreads his propaganda in today's world. And we as God's people, we need to understand. We need to understand this so we can avoid it and not be caught up in all of this lies and propaganda that's out there. In the political culture, there are two kinds of people. And as you watch the TV and the news media, if you pay close attention to what's going on, you can see this. You see these people that are interviewed, you know, all these different people that the media, the interviews. If you look closely, they're easy to spot. The news media, and the word media, it's nothing more than a joke when it's applied alongside the word news. For the word itself means to be in the middle. And we all know, or should know, that the so-called news media is not in the middle. It is always to the extreme right or the extreme left, usually the extreme left. But as they interview these different people, all these different news analysts, all these different doctors and lawyers and all these so-called experts in their field, they talk and they argue endlessly about all the goings-on in the world, especially all the political agenda. And in these people, you see two kinds of people. Some who are trying to be objective and reasonable about things, and those who are, those people who are actually trying to tell us the facts and educate people as to what's going on. And then there's those who take a totally one-sided view of whatever the issue is. And it is these people who are most valuable to the propagandists, these people who takes this one-sided view. It's these type of people, they will always roll right over top of the person who's trying to tell you the truth. If all fails, everything else fails, they will shout those people down to get their one-sided view across. These are the people who the propaganda values the most, because he has duped them into believing the facts are real and the process is necessary. They are a sounding board for his short little phrases, his one-sided ideals, and his appeal to the emotions of the people. And it works for them. It works for him time after time. And the reason it works so well, as Adolf Hitler said, our power of forgetting is enormous. We forget what they say from year to year and one election to the next. But you know, the reason God's people and his nation as a whole forgets is because we want to forget. We have this problem with reality in this country. We want to delude our minds. We want to mislead our minds and deceiving our judgment and believing what's right is wrong and what's wrong is right. We want to evade the truth and live a lie. We want to live in a fantasy land. Let's go to Isaiah 5. And there's some very familiar scripture here, but we'll go over this. Isaiah 5, 24, I believe. Let's see here, 24. Let me see where I want to start here. Verse 20, I guess. It's not what I've got written down, but we'll start in verse 20 here. Woe unto them that call evil good and good evil, that put darkness for light and light for darkness, that put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitterness. Woe unto them that are wise in their own eyes and prudent in their own sight. Woe unto them that are mighty to drink wine, and men of strength to mingle strong drink, which justify the wicked for money or reward, and take away the righteous of the righteousness from him. That's the way we have become. We put right for wrong and wrong for right and sweet for bitterness. And in back in verse 13 there it says, Therefore my people are gone into captivity, because they have no knowledge. Because they have no knowledge. And their honorable men are famished, and their multitude dried up with thirst. We seek to forget. The multitudes or the masses are thirsting for something. Better jobs, or maybe a job period. They thirst for a better life and more stuff, because we just don't have enough stuff, do we? They listen and they thirst because we're greedy. That's the way it is. People just can't get enough stuff. And that's why the political propagandist is so effective. He knows the people wants him to give them something to make their life better. And the harder the times are, the more gullible people become. The easier it is to lie to the people and to get their votes. That's how Adolf Hitler came to power. And look what he did to his people and his nation. He brought them to ruin, all for his own selfish, one-sided reasons, or purpose, I'm sorry. Do we think it can't happen to us as a nation? Don't lie to yourself. Don't delude your own mind. Do we think someone who is legally elected to the office of president could not then put his henchmen into key positions and offices, kill off the opposition, and take over the military by placing the right people in the right places? Do we think that can't happen here? That's what Adolf Hitler did. And it can be done again by the right person with the wrong motivation. Yes, it can. Yes, it can. Continuing on here with what Hitler said. He said, what, for example, would we say about a poster who was advertising a certain brand of soap, or advertising a new soap, and describing other soaps as being good? Would we not shake our heads? The same thing applies to the political advertising. The function of propaganda is not to weigh and to ponder the rights or the goodness of different things or people, but to effectively emphasize the one right it is set out to argue for. Its task is not to make an objective study of the truth as far as it favors the enemy, and then set it before the masses with academic fairness. Its task is to serve our own right, always and unflinchingly. These, folks, are the words of a man in which the people handed over absolute power to, in hopes of achieving a better life. It's amazing the freedoms that people will give up for the hopes of a better life. It's amazing the freedoms people give up when they get in a bad way and start grasping at straws. It's amazing the lies and the deception that people will believe when they get desperate. So we see here the propagandist has no objectivity or obligation to be objective. He feels no obligation to present both sides of any issue. He feels no obligation, or not one bit of obligation, to budge 1 inch on any issue, whatever that issue may be. Again, it's his way or the highway. That's the way he views things. He will drive his point home over and over and over with these little phrases and sound bites in order to get his point across. And anyone who thinks that propaganda doesn't exist in this country among the political realm today is deluding their own minds. Propaganda is alive and well in our nation. It is spouted forth each and every day, especially by those politicians who hold the higher offices. They have their own personal objectives and will do anything to accomplish those objectives. And whether or not it benefits the whole of the people doesn't matter. Makes no difference. And some of those, they will accomplish this even if they have to go against the Constitution of the United States. They will go over the Constitution if they have to. And we in the church needs to pay attention to this and not be lulled to sleep with all their repetitive soft talk and propaganda. And you will be lulled to sleep if you're not vigilant in pursuing your Christian life and paying close attention, for we are part of the mass. Now, what do these kind of people think about you and me? What do they really think about us? After all which they do, they claim to be doing for us, don't they? They care so much about us, you know. Those politicians, they care so much about us. Well, they do care about us, and they do need us. But rest assured, it's not because they love you. We're just a means. We're just the stepping stones for them to accomplish their own objectives. Adolf says, quote here, The broad mass of a nation does not consist of diplomats or even of professors or political law or even individuals who are capable of forming a rational opinion. That's what the propagandist thinks about us. They don't think we're capable of making a rational opinion. And a whole lot of times, we don't make rational decisions. We believe what they say. He says it consists of plain mortals, wavering and inclined to doubt and uncertainty, and as soon as our own propaganda admits so much as a glimmer of right on the other side, the foundation for doubt on our side has been laid. You can't agree with them. You know, if you're a propagandist, you will fizzle out if they have any doubt whatsoever on your side. He says the masses then are in no position to distinguish where the other side's injustice ends and our own begins. But the most brilliant propagandist technique will yield no success unless one fundamental principle is borne in mind constantly and with unflagging attention. It must confine itself to a few points, as I've already mentioned, and repeat them over and over and over. So as often in this world, persistence is the first and most requirement for any success. So for propaganda to be successful, it must be repeated, you know, its agenda over and over and over, be repetitive. Now, I don't know about you folks out there, but that's what I see going on in our nation's capital today. We have two political parties, and neither is willing to compromise for the benefit of the people, not 1 inch. They don't want to compromise for the people they're supposed to be taking care of. They argue and the people suffer. And both parties believe if they agree with the other party just one little bit, it will show a sign of weakness on their part, and they can't gain any ground. That's what Adolf said. You can't agree with the other side. If you do, you will lose. So it's no wonder we, the people, are inclined to doubt and uncertainty because of the way our leaders act. And I hate to admit it, you know, but he's right in saying the masses as a whole are incapable of forming a rational opinion. For if they were, we would not have the leadership in Washington we have today if we were rational in our way of thinking. Before World War II, the German people were in a desperate situation. They had gotten defeated in World War I, and their economy was in shreds. And they were gullible to the smooth talk and propaganda of Adolf Hitler. Well, our economy is in shred too, folks. And we, the people, are also beginning to get in a desperate situation. And we, like the people of Germany, are beginning to grasp at straws. We will grasp at those smooth-talking politicians that come along. We are willing to give up our freedoms and to elect into office the politicians who are the most skilled in the field of propaganda. Under the present administration, we have already seen our privacy invaded by the monitoring of the phone system by our government, all in the name of protecting the citizens. We've seen this huge push by certain political figures, including the president, to ban certain guns, or all guns if possible, in the name of protecting the citizens. They know that will not stop murder and killing, but they've got a whole lot of people believing that it will through their propaganda efforts. It's crazy, insane people who kill other people with guns, not the gun itself. If there was no thing such as a gun, do you think people would stop killing other people? Before guns were ever invented, people were murdering other people by the thousands. To completely stop murder, you would have to outlaw knives, claw hammers, tire tubes, broken pop bottles, short pieces of 2x4s, and you'd have to keep people hands handcuffed behind them to keep them from strangling somebody else to death. You couldn't have any poison in the world, and how would you stop people from running other people over with a car? You know, you can't stop it. People are going to kill people. But the masses, we the people, as Adolf said, cannot make a rational decision because we are so gullible when it comes to propaganda. I heard the president say on the TV the other day concerning these wiretaps that the government's been doing. He said, "Oh, we're not listening to what's being said in these conversations. We're just monitoring the calls." If that's not double talk, I don't know what is. How do you monitor a call without listening to what's being said? I mean, you can't do it. Of course they're listening to what's being said, but there's a whole lot of people believe what he says. Propaganda. Continuing on here with what he said. Adolf here. He said, "The purpose of propaganda is not to provide interesting distraction for blasé young gentlemen, but to convince the masses. But the masses are slow moving, and they always require a certain amount of time before they are even ready to notice a thing. And only after the simplest ideas are repeated thousands of times will the masses finally remember them." Not that they believe them now, he says, but that they remember them, because they are so forgetful that only what they remember, will be what counts. The broadness of outline from which we must never depart in combination with steady consistency allows our final success to mature. Then to our amazement, we shall see what tremendous results such perseverance leads to results that are almost beyond our understanding. And it is. It's beyond my understanding how that people fall in to such things and listen to all this propaganda and just follow along like blind little sheep without ever questioning whether it's true or not. Well, they are already running ads on TV, and some of you may have saw them, for Obamacare. I saw one the other night. And the ad explained how good it would be for the American people and our economy to put in Obamacare into place. People could now have health care, they said, who wasn't able to afford it before. But listen to this. Listen to this, what they said. The ad said it would give small businesses more capital to expand their businesses, since they would no longer be paying for most of their employees' health premiums. That's a lie, people. Most small businesses don't pay their employees' health premium to start with. And if they did, why would they need Obamacare to start with? Propaganda. You know, that's just the opposite of what it will do. It will put small businesses out of business. And small businesses is what keeps this country afloat. Small businesses and the working man. But they know, just as Adolf Hitler knew, that if they run these ads long enough and be persistent long enough, the people, the masses, will accept it, whether it's true or not. Propaganda and deception. And these ads are more than likely paid for by Americans' taxpayers' dollars. I don't know that for a fact, but we pay, for the propaganda that is thrown at us every day. But we don't want to hear the truth as a nation. We want to be lied to. We as a people cannot face the truth of any kind, politically or spiritually. Now, I mentioned this scripture just recently in another sermon, but I want us to read it again. Jeremiah 5:31. It says, "The prophets prophesy falsely, and the priests bear rule by their means, and my people love it so." That's what we want. We love it this way. In other words, we as a people are not being taught the truth of God by the so-called religious community out there. They're teaching God's people as a nation lies, but it's what we want to hear. We don't want to be told homosexuality is wrong. We don't want to be told that same-sex marriage is wrong. We don't want to be told that abortion and murder of the most vulnerable of our little people is wrong. Because we want to do these things, and we want it to be sanctioned by the religious community and the political community. We want to be told it's okay, so we don't have to bear the guilt when we do it. If the religious and political community says it's okay, then we don't have to feel guilty, because it's legal under the system in which we live. Also in 1 Timothy 4, verses 3 and 4, the Apostle Paul says of God's people, "For the time will come when they will not endure sound doctrine, but after their own lusts shall they heap to them teachers having itching ears," or rather leaders who will lie to them, religious and political. "And they shall turn their ears from the truth, and shall be turned unto fables." We as a people want to be lied to. That's what we want to hear. And when you've got a people of this mindset, then propaganda is in fertile ground. It's been said that 3/4 of the population believe the president is not truthful to us as a people. But we believe the president is lying, yet that same three-fourths of the people will turn around and elect him in to a second term, even though they don't believe what he's saying. So what Hitler said is true. The results are indeed beyond our understanding. What they do is beyond reason and rational thinking. But they do it because they want to believe the propaganda. They want to believe the lies, even though a large percent knows that it's not true. It just boggles the mind, doesn't it? We hear these high-ranking personalities run on the ticket of saving Social Security, cutting taxes for the middle classes, and universal health care. We've been told that for 40 years, and it hasn't come to pass yet. But we still believe them, don't we? Still believe them. We still believe the propaganda because we are a desperate people. When a president is first elected to office, he usually has a very high approval rating. And if he goes through 2 terms and he leaves office 8 years later, his approval has usually dropped drastically. And then we began looking for a new propagandist to tell us the same old lies. But, folks, when you got a man occupying the highest office in the land, and he's a liar, then your nation has no hope. There is no hope for us whatsoever. We're in a dangerous predicament. Look what happened to the German people under Adolf Hitler. Oh yes, he got the trains up and running on time. He got the economy back on its feet. He brought the Volkswagen car into existence so all the common people could have an affordable car. His approval rating was high because the masses was living a better life. And they were behind him in everything that he did. But look where it finally got them. Look where it brought them to. A conquered people a second time. A nation split right down the middle, east and west. Once again in total run. And it all happened in just a few short years. But the people were behind him. He was popular. We too live in a nation of political propaganda. We live in a culture where we punish the people who are right. We punish the people who are trying to tell us the truth. And we reward those who are telling us the lies. We've got it all backwards. As Isaiah says in chapter 5:20, I've done read that. We put evil for good and good for evil. Darkness for light. Light for darkness. He says we justify the wicked for money, rewards. I've already read that. Take bribes. And we take away the righteousness from the righteous. And we have cast away the law of the Lord. And God says, woe unto people who do these things. And when God says woe, He's not talking good. He's talking about bad things to come. And He says, woe unto these people who do all these evil things and take pride in doing so. Like Sodom, we pride ourselves in the evil we do. And God is not going to put up with that forever. And anyone who by chance may hear what I'm saying needs to understand this and make preparations to turn your life around before it's too late. In Malachi 3:6, God says, I am the Lord, I change not. And if you want to add Hebrews 13:8 and James 1:17 to what it says, I am the Lord, I change not. I'm the same yesterday, today, and forever. And every good gift and every perfect gift is from above and comes from the Father of lights, in whom there is no variableness, neither shadow of turning. God doesn't move one little iota, people. God the Father and Jesus Christ, they don't change. Their purpose for the nation of Israel, those of us in the church, and humanity as a whole, has never changed from the creation of man unto this day. It hasn't changed. So we can look back in the Bible and we can see examples of what God did in ancient times when His people as a nation did right and what He did when they did wrong. And whatever we see happen back then, we can apply to ourselves today, in this modern day. He operates the same way. He operates the same way now as He did back then. We should expect nothing different as a people. If He punished His people back then for being proud and high-minded in all of their evil works, then there is no reason to expect He won't do that today with His people who have become evil and high-minded. We should expect nothing different. And with that in mind, let's turn to Jeremiah 8. Because in Jeremiah's time, Israel and Judah had become a culture of lies and propaganda. Jeremiah 8. Jeremiah 8, let's see, 8:5. Starting verse 8. God says, "Why then is this people of Jerusalem slidden back by perpetual backsliding? They hold fast deceit, and they refuse to return." Well, it's the same today. No one will tell you the truth, especially politicians. Politicians will tell you a lie, and if you back them in the corner, they'll tell you another lie to back up that lie, and then another one to back up that lie. And it's just lie, 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 one lie after another. They hold fast to deceit. They will never tell you the truth. They refuse to tell the truth. You can ask them a simple yes or no question, but they will never give you a yes or no answer. Verse 6. "I hearkened and heard, but they spake not aright. No man repented him of his wickedness, saying, What have I done? Every one turned to his course, as the horse rushes into battle." In other words, they run as hard as they can to tell a lie and do evil, like a horse running into battle. Verse 7. "Yea, the stork in the heaven knows her appointed time, and the turtle and the crane and the swallow observe the time of their coming. But my people know not the judgment of the Lord. How do we say we are wise? And the law of the Lord is with us. Lo, certainly, in vain made he it. The pen of the scribes is in vain." In other words, the pen of the scribe is in vain. We've got laws. We've got due process that we're supposed to go through. But certain political figures think they don't have to abide by those laws. They think they can go over those laws. And they do go over those laws. And they seemingly get by with it. Verse 9. "The wise men are ashamed, they are dismayed and taken. Lo, they have rejected the word of the Lord. And what wisdom is in them?" We have all these so-called wise, educated people which we have chosen to rule over us. People who are supposed to be leading us down the right path. But it's these very people who have rejected God. It's these people who have rejected the only standard by which all other wisdom is to be measured by. And when the wisdom of God is rejected, folks, there is no hope for us. For God, as I've already mentioned, is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Verse 10. "Therefore will I give their wives unto others, and their fields to them that shall inherit them. For every one of them, from the least unto the greatest, is given to covetousness. From the prophet even unto the priest, everyone deals falsely." Everyone. Nobody will tell you the truth. From the religious leaders and your civil leaders to Congress to the president. Nobody. It's all lies and propaganda. They all deal falsely with us. But we love it. And that's the way we want it. They've got all these strategies laid out as to what will work with the masses. What strategy can we use to influence the people? What propaganda can we use to sway the people for our own selfish reasons and purposes? How can we play on the emotions of the people? Well, what about us as Christians? Because it's all too easy for us to fall right in among the masses. It's all too easy for us to ride along on our emotions as well. We need to listen to carefully and be able to discern when they're feeding us a bunch of baloney. I've been tricked more than once in my life by people who I thought were my friends. So, one of the things we need to do is be careful who we hang out with. Be careful of who you befriend also. On over in chapter 9 here, verse 4 and 5 says, "Take you heed every one his neighbor, and trust you not in any brother." These are strong words. "For every brother will utterly supplant, and every neighbor will walk with slanders." "And they will deceive every one his neighbor, and will not speak the truth." That's us today, people. "They have taught their tongue to speak lies, and weary themselves to commit iniquity." I mean, they work at it like a job. It's a job, and I mean, they really work at it. Verse 6, if I have time to read this, says, "Your habitation is in the midst of deceit. Through deceit they refuse to know me, says the Lord. Therefore, thus says the Lord of hosts, Behold, I will melt them and try them, for how shall I do for the daughter of my people? Their tongue, it is as a narrow arrow shot out. It speaks deceit or lies. One speaks peaceably to his neighbor with his mouth, but in his heart he lays in wait for him, to stab him in the back. God says, Shall I not visit them for these things? Shall not my soul be avenged on such a nation as this? For the mountains will I take up weeping and wailing, and for the habitations of the wilderness a lamentation, because they are burned up, so that no one can pass through them. That's what God's going to do. This is what God's going to do to these people. Neither can men hear the voice of the cattle. Both the fowl of heavens and the beasts are fled. They're all gone. And I will make Jerusalem heaps and a den of dragons, and I will make the cities of Judah desolate, without an inhabitant. Verse 12, Woe is the wise man that may understand this. And who is he to whom the mouth of the Lord has spoken, that he may declare it? For what the land, lost my place here, for what the land perish and is burned up like a wilderness, and none passes through. We need to listen carefully and use sound judgment, folks, and common sense as to what's being said, and not be played for a fool. Well, all this being said, I'm still thankful to be an American and live in this land. I'm thankful for the freedoms, at least the ones I can afford to pay for. I'm thankful we can meet here and worship without having someone come in here and haul us all off. I'm thankful for all the blessings God has given me in this land. But you know, I cannot say that I'm proud to be an American. I'm thankful to be an American, but I am not proud, because I'm not proud of the things my government stands for. Abominable things. I'm not proud of a lot of the laws and policies we have in this nation. Our government today is not truthful with its citizens. Our leaders are not truthful with the very people who entrust them with their well-being. Instead of looking out for their well-being, they use them as stepping stones to their own positions of power, without understanding or caring how their subjects have to live. It's as though they would rather lie to us than tell us the truth, when the truth would serve the purpose better. They would still rather lie to us. That's the way of Satan. And our nation is full of the way of Satan, lies and propaganda. We have become Sodom. We have become Gomorrah. And God says He will. I repeat, He will avenge Himself of a nation like this. And Sodom and Gomorrah, we don't have time to go back and read and study about it. God destroyed those nations, not solely because they were a nation of homosexual people and sexual illicit people. That was one reason, yes, but it was because of their pride in what they were doing. Their pride. They were proud of their sins. And that's the way we have become today. Look around you. If you have time, read Isaiah 1 through 9. I was going to read that, but I see that I don't have time. So just jot that down in your notes and read it. And, what more can we... And after you read it, you will have to look at yourself and say, what more can we say?